Hello, thank you. Thank you for joining me. I'm so thrilled. Today's guest is Bob Choat. And Bob Choat, if you don't know him, he's a mind-body transformation expert. And I mean, when we use the word expert, we don't use it lightly when it comes to Bob. And Bob is also an author, amongst many, many, many fascinating and wonderful, exciting things that he's done in his life. But his most recent book is Mind Your Own Fitness. Hi, Bob.
Hi. How's it going, Linda?
It's good. How are you?
Going really good.
Good. I'm so glad that you're able to join me for this conversation. Do you want to just maybe, you're just so full of fascinating information, and do you want to maybe say a bit more about yourself so people get to know you?
Well, yeah, just a little bit. In essence, the basis for everything that I've done started from when I was a kid, and it started with the martial arts. In fact, my mom was my very first martial arts teacher, teaching me Kendo. So throughout my life, I've studied martial arts, I've applied it into a lot of different areas, and I progressed. I learned. My thing is kind of like Bruce Lee, wanting to go on that journey of learning a lot of different arts and mindset as well, which is really important in a martial arts. So my first formal education in martial arts was in Okinawa, where I studied Goju as a kid. And then later on, when I came back to the United States, there was no like really martial arts schools like you see now. I mean, you see them like all over the place. Back then, you actually had to find somebody that was either in the military or whatever that did it. So I was able to find certain people. Then when I went in the Marine Corps, I found others, and not only did I study hand-to-hand combat, I was an instructor in that while I was in the Marines. Then later on, studied other martial arts. I studied Kenpo, ended up getting my 5th degree black belt in Kenpo. Studied Jeet Kune Do, which is Bruce Lee's system, became a senior instructor in that. And Krav Maga, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. So it goes on and on and on and on and on. And so I apply the more of the mindset of the martial arts in terms of what I do. And I went on a journey, studied psychology, got a little PhD in that kind of thing, and just all kinds. So my thing is to go on the discovery, continue that journey throughout my life, adapt, change, grow, and even to this day, even in my young age now, you know, I still continue to do that.
That's brilliant. One of the things that certainly I know that some of my coaching clients struggle with, and I think probably people who will be listening to this interview will possibly struggle with as well, is it's really easy and it's fun and interesting to read about mindset, and it's really and you can read a book and you can do all sorts of things that are, I'll say, academic in regards to mindset.
Yes.
But if you had sort of one or many tips on how people can actually change their mindset so that it works for them and it really allows them to achieve what they desire, what would that be?
Yeah, my suggestion is, if you find, even in an academic setting, even if you find something, whether you read it in a book, or you watch it on a video, or you hear it from somebody, just don't take their word for it. Take action. So find something and you take immediate action to see if it works for you. So this is very, very important. It may not work. You may fall flat on your face and say, okay, I need to get back up. I need to make an adjustment. Maybe what was told me didn't work, but maybe if I make a slight adjustment, just even a little bit, maybe it will work.
Yeah.
And in a martial arts, because this is really key, because martial arts is really good, and especially in the old days, where we start off as a white belt, and we're going through all the practice. So a sensei would teach one thing, and you work at it and you work at it and you work at it. Initially, because you're trying to be like your sensei, but then our body type is different, especially when I was a kid, it's going to be different. So I had to adapt it for myself. And, Bruce Lee was famous for saying that, find what works for you and then throw out the rest.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah. So it's really, 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 really important not only to learn it, to apply it.
Yeah.
Because to apply it and adjust, apply it and adjust, apply it and adjust.
So the magic words there. I love that. I love that you say that, because there's so many people, and I have to say I was sort of guilty of this, having gone through traditional schooling. You do all this studying, and there's not much applying. There's just lots of learning, right? When you're which is crazy, because if you think about kids, especially like here in the United States, they're so focused on giving homeworks and testing from now, even like as early as kindergarten. Yes.
And it just blows my mind that these kids are getting so much of this, and they're not really learning how to learn, and they're not learning to enjoy learning in a real world. Yeah. So if we think about like in Japan, because there's a recent, people actually looked at the Japanese way of learning, because, they're really good. And also in Switzerland, because Switzerland is like right at the top. They're number one in the world in terms of their academic achievement. Why? Well, in both cases, they found that both the Japanese and the Swiss, they don't give homework until like later on in life. I think in Japan it's like 4th or 5th grade. They don't test. There's no testing. It's all about play.
Yeah.
Through physical activity, through learning about the world, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to learn. Because this is how the brain works. The brain works not through reading a bunch of books. But by the way, this is a really good by Tim Ferriss. He talks about action, by the way. Same thing.
Yeah, okay.
So it's not about learning, gaining a lot of knowledge and taking a lot of tests. You're not going to learn that way. You're not going to have fun doing it. It's learning by doing.
Yeah.
And if if you do that, and because you learn to fall and everything, you're going to be much more effective in life versus accumulating a lot of knowledge and taking a lot of tests, because that doesn't prove anything. It doesn't at all.
Yeah. And I mean, there are tons of people who do fantastic, extraordinary things in their lives. And, there are examples of how they weren't very good at school, or they, were kicked out of school or dropped out of school or whatever. So yeah, it's fascinating. So one of the other things that a lot of people struggle with, and I just want your thoughts on this, is sort of, what's the definition of, what's the definition of failure? What is failure really? Because people really struggle with that. They get stuck, right? So it's kind of like, I was learning this and I was really, really good at it, and then it didn't work. So I'm not going to do anything now, right?
Yeah.
There's stuck. So what are your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts regarding failure, it's only failure when you completely just give up. Not when you make the mistake on doing something. Because the truth is, as children, going back to that, even as a baby, so the baby, as it is first learning how to get up and walk, and that baby is just testing its muscles and its balance and everything like that, and it's not thinking about failure. It's thinking about, I'm gonna make this thing happen. So it gets up, it falls down, gets up, falls down. It'll hold up, it may start to balance on something. You see this time again. Then also it'll bounce, then it'll sit back down on its bottom. It'll get back up, sit back down on its bottom. Eventually it's going to take that first step. Then it's going to take the second step and the third step. And mommy or daddy's out there, oh, come on. You can do it. Also the baby is like all happy and everything like that, and just all the way to, so, and then the parents praise, oh yeah.
And the child never says, it's too hard, I'm not doing this, or I'm giving up, like I've tried this 5 times. And plus at that point in time, the parents encouraged the baby. And what happened?
later on, and I think a lot has to do with both the system, where if we think about it, the system in our education regarding grades, like you get an F, you get an A. So the A's are really praised all the way through all, even up to a PhD. Grades are praised. Failure is not. Failure in educational system, and our parents will now, they get caught up in all this kind of stuff. They said, you're failure. So it starts there, then it gets embedded into our subconscious mind that, we have to become, like, be perfect.
Yeah.
So if we make a mistake, then we're considered a failure. We get a big F.
Yeah.
And so this has been embedded in society. So I think it's imperative not only for the people that you coach, but also for society as a whole to start to embrace failure, not as failure. Failure, so instead of having that big F and seeing it as failure, I see it as feedback. So, so I made a mistake, so what? What do I have to do to adjust? Because if you do that, those people that will see that F as feedback and then make the adjustment versus the person who's getting A all the time, those Fs will become people who have more R's in their life. They have resiliency.
Resiliency. Yes.
And results. Yes. So, but they will develop the resiliency and a grit, and they'll be able to move forward. They'll be able to overcome more difficulties versus somebody who's always getting A's and who's always expected to live up to that standard.
So, do you think it's possible for somebody who always succeed to have resiliency?
Yes.
Or do you need some level of sort of, I wouldn't say failure.
Here's the thing. There's no such thing as somebody who always succeeds. So if somebody is good at doing something and they're always getting A's, there's a big problem in that. Because the problem is they have not risen to where they need to challenge themselves to a higher level. There may be even a fear in there. And trying to be perfect. So they go to their level in its perfect in educational system, yet when they get out into the real world where challenges are not academic in nature, challenges are real. And when they get out there and they're facing something and they haven't challenged themselves earlier on, going beyond what our educational system says, you're an A student, or you're a B student or C student or whatever like that.
And in your view, what does it look like for somebody to challenge themselves? Because I find, again, with my, my experience in coaching industry and just people in general, because I find there's very little sort of tolerance for people to have time to know and understand themselves at a very deep level and know and understand what they truly want and desire. So I guess I just lost.
Okay, Linda, I got it. So self-awareness, and I know that others have talked about this, and I've talked about self-awareness. If you don't know yourself, you'll never reach what I call self-mastery. So you need to be self-aware of yourself internally and that external, which, if you're focusing on your mission, your purpose, and everything like that. So you really have to know yourself overall. What's going to drive you in this life? Yeah. And so self-awareness in if you want to become successful, you need to become self-aware and making those adjustments. Same thing like going back to martial arts. I had to be self-aware of my own body. I had to be self-aware even of the spatial area. So like when I would throw a strike, I had to understand how my whole physiology worked in order to make it more effective. So how to make but I had to be self-aware of my own body in terms of that. and to be self-aware of my own mindset. And I had to be self-aware of my own purpose on why I wanted to continue in a martial arts. And the same thing in everything else that I do in life. So self-aware, I think it's important for people. So I keep a journal and I write in it. So doing my writings. So
very neat writing, by the way.
So in that, I write down like my goals and my purpose and everything. And I do this almost every day. And I write that down, rewrite it. And then I write down like either at the end of the day or beginning of another day. So I like the first 15 minutes, I'll just journal and just write down when I first get up. And this sets me up for the rest of the day, besides my exercise that I do in the morning. So it sets me up for success in the rest of the day. Yet it makes me self-aware in terms of my thoughts and everything, what's directing me.
And so, and I love this because this is something that I often tell people is like, you know, in order to gain self-awareness, you need to understand what's going on in your head. Like however, is it 65,000 thoughts for men and 80,000? I'm not sure if that's true. I should actually look that up, but I heard that men on average have 65,000 thoughts a day and women have 80,000 thoughts. I don't know why it would be different, but anyways.
Yes, and the majority of the men's thoughts are on the opposite sex.
Oh, yeah. And so, you know, in order to actually gain awareness into what is actually going on in those, you know, thoughts every day, and there's a very, very high percentage that's repeated every day.
Yes.
It's very helpful to journal and to bring awareness to that. But if you had to say sort of what is a really good routine, especially because you're a neuroscience expert, what would you say would be from the way the brain functions, a really good one or two or many things to do in a routine every day so that people can actually work alongside their brain, not sort of against it?
Yes. So one of the things, because here, you know, probably a lot of people have already set their New Year's resolutions and they're looking at this huge, complex kind of thing going down, right? And that overwhelms them. It overwhelms our brain and our mindset. Yet, our brains, in order to take action, we can't think about the big, overwhelming thing. Action only happens in a moment. Action happens in chunks. So my suggestion is for you to, number one, think about the big thing. Sure. Now, break it down. So if you have like a year-end goal at the end of the year, break it down into monthly goals. And start with the bigger one, come back. So begin with the end of mind, come back, and breaking down in each month. Break down each month into a weekly action plan. And then break that week into daily action steps.
Awesome.
So action steps are those chunks. So what you're going to do is write down, this is what my day is like, what I'm going to be doing, the action steps. That way, when you do that, you're going to, in a sense, become aware of the time that you're putting in. And believe it or not, because people say, you know, I'm always busy. Yeah, you're busy doing nothing. You're busy on social media. You're busy doing this kind of stuff. What are you really busy at?
Yes.
Right?
Well, it is. I mean, we do have a culture of like busy, right? It's so cool. It's so interesting for people to be busy. But you're right. To be busy, like spending however many hours a day on social media or sitting in front of the TV or doing whatever else they're doing.
Yeah, even when people are at work, a big part of the time is that they're really not working. Yeah. So be busy at working, especially working towards something. It's the reason you break it down into chunks. So like when I use my journal, you know, so I know that I'm journaling for that amount of time and I'm working out for that amount of time. If you say you don't have time to work out, well, you look at what you're doing in the rest of your day.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and so look at your day, divide it up. So I'm going to be doing this at this time, this time. When I say that, if it's very difficult for for the people watching to take a lot of different actions, find something immediate that you find a little difficult, not something you find easy to do. Find something that challenges you. When I say challenge, it doesn't have to be like overwhelming challenge where you get so anxiety and stress. Just a little bit higher. Just challenge and then do something. Like journal. If you haven't journaled, write it. Do that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
find that little bit challenge that takes you outside of your comfort zone, okay, and into that zone where you start to get into a state of flow. And when you're in that area and you're just a little bit challenged, you're actually going to start feeling much better about yourself. You're going to want to do it more and more and more and more. When that becomes easy, when that becomes comfortable, then what do you think you do next? You go outside that again.
Keep going. Yeah, yeah.
Keep going, keep going, keep going until it becomes an ingrained habit. And I know it's been said like it takes 21 days to create a new habit. Well, that's not true. Some people it's faster. Some people it's going to take a lot longer.
And it depends on the habit.
It depends on the habit and depends on how they engage in a habit. So Anders Ericsson, he wrote. He talked about I think Malcolm Gladwell mentioned in his book about the 10,000 hour rule.
Oh, Outliers.
Outliers, yes. So there's parts that Malcolm Gladwell got right, and Anders Ericsson mentions that there's a lot that he got wrong in terms of that. So, what Anders Ericsson talks about is deep practice. So you find something. So in deep practice is you engage into an activity and you're highly focused on it. And if you have a teacher or mentor, somebody that has the necessary teaching and skills to teach you, that makes it even better. And so you really want to get focus on one thing, not everything. It's like he mentions about playing a piano. So playing a piano is you don't like try to learn a whole range of stuff as they typically would do in schools. You focus on just one little area until you go back and forth. You get feedback, until you perfect that one little piece. So going back to when I mentioned feedback is very important. And eventually, when you work on that piece and you get the feedback, and then you work on another little piece and you get the feedback, and it doesn't take that long. Sometimes it can take only a few minutes, 30 minutes to master that one little piece based on feedback, because you get over and over and over again. And you put a whole bunch of pieces together. Think about learning a language. So you're perfect in learning your ABCs, right? Then you put it all together, and then now you can take the small little chunks, put it in a little bit bigger chunks, and then now you end up creating a masterpiece. In fact, he mentions about a young prodigy, a piano prodigy, who was able to learn playing the piano typically what would take a year of lessons, and she did it, I think, in like 30 minutes.
Wow. With this technique of applying with the feedback.
Of doing the feedback, of using deliberate practice in terms of and being able to get feedback. And looking at that, looking back on my martial arts training, there's a lot that I would do much better. And I learned it and some of it and what he taught. Then I had a friend who was a master in Aikido. And I was able to break down the process of Aikido, which is what Steven Seagal teaches, and beginning with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey talks about in the 7 Habits, highly effective. Beginning with the end in mind, not taking it like from the beginner level, but taking it right from the end.
Yeah,
and breaking it down, and looking at the simplicity of Aikido on how it works on everything else, that all the components is based on 3 things that I learned. And it's 3 wheels, because Aikido is is circular motion. So there's 3 wheels. So and I was able to break down just by using those 3 wheels. I was able to master Aikido in 1 day. 1 day. All aspects of Aikido because of those 3 wheels.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. So, and what's fascinating, and one of the things I use a lot is be, do, have, rather than, wait to have a certain thing and, or do it a certain way, and then I'll be able to be that. So what you're saying is, if you put in your mind that you can actually be a master of whatever it is, and I don't know if that is related to the deep practice, but it just sounds like it's a state of mind that's completely different to how you would typically approach things, most things, anything really, in sort of a more traditional sense. So it's a mindset shift.
Yes, the traditional way of teaching, of learning, of anything is broken.
Yeah,
is completely broken, and we can master stuff much more quickly, and it doesn't matter where you're at. And here's one of the biggest problems, like with people that have very high IQs, is that they tend to get the most stuck in terms of that. Versus somebody that's at the average level. Yeah.
So, well, it's fascinating. And, I'm guessing you've probably read Carol Dweck's book, Mindset.
Yes.
Well, she talks about fixed versus growth mindset. And, for me, it was just so true. And it really talks about how if we just shift the way we look at things and perceive things, instead of saying, I'm a failure because, I got the F, and really saying, this is the feedback I need in order to, continue to keep trying to progress, to do something else, to try it differently. It's...
Yeah, and it's very interesting because Carol Dweck talks about the fixed and growth mindset, and Dr. Ellen Langer mentions, she even talks about mindset in a different way. She talks about mindset regarding aging, of all things.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So how we think about ourselves will affect our physiology, what we believe in everything. And I know that in her famous 1978 study, where she looked at elderly people, these were men, and so she divided them up into 2 groups. So these are guys that were suffering from all kinds of diseases. They were like bent over like this, and their hands were like this, and everything like. So she divided them up into a control group and experimental group, and then she took them back 20 years earlier. So that would be 1958 into an environment. So the control group, they went back to look like 1958. They still were able to wear the 78 stuff and read whatever from 78. The place where they were like 58. The experimental group was brought back to that place, except they had to dress as they dressed back then. They had to listen to music and read newspapers, and the money that they carried was from that time period. So everything was from that time period. And what happened? Now, both groups benefited from it. The experimental group really benefited from it. So even men that were like shorter because of their diseases grew taller. Yeah. The arthritis went away. They started moving around as if they were 20 years younger. And what was the thing that changed? It was, the environment. Yeah, it was their mindset. Yeah. And later she did another study where they had these women who were housekeepers for a hotel. So they would go and change, and they wanted to know how to get fit. So she took them, did the same kind of study, except she implanted in her mind that, telling them that the kind of work they did was actually exercise.
Yeah.
Doing the same work.
Yeah.
So they imagine what they were doing was exercise. What happened? They lost weight, they got healthier and everything because their mindset shifted.
Changed, yeah.
Yes. So
very powerful.
So it happens. Mindset is so powerful in a lot of how we perceive things in our life. And even like with the people watching this, I want to make a suggestion on doing that mindset shift change, how you see yourself, really how you see yourself, how you see those around you.
Yeah.
And once you do that, things are going to massively change. And make the shift, take the necessary actions, and have that change in how you see failure, not as failure, but as what? Feedback, right?
That's right.
So you make those
Awesome.
adjustments, you make those adjustments, you make those adjustments.
Awesome.
The truth is, the most successful people are the people that took the most risks and they had the most falls.
Yeah. And almost I want to say that F is also fun, right?
It is fun.
It's like,
it is fun.
It's like failures and fun while you're actually figuring out what it is, this big world is all about, and learning. Yeah.
And speaking about that, because for the last 5.5 years, I've been doing parkour.
Yes.
And back in April of 2013, I had a parkour fail. You may have seen like some of those YouTube videos where these guys would do parkour, but then they fall. So I had one of those falls where I hit my face in the concrete, broke my nose, and I look really messed up.
Yeah.
Yet I don't look at that as a fail. I looked at it as feedback. What did I do wrong? I knew what I did wrong immediately when I did it.
Yeah.
So,
and you've just got back on course after.
I got back on the course, and the course was another thing for your people to learn, for the listeners to learn, is focus. Mm-hmm. Focus on your goals and everything. I didn't focus when I was doing that parkour jump, and I had the face plant, and I was talking to somebody demonstrating this, and I wasn't focused. So focus, very, very important. So you can have focus and fun and feedback and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So it's the Bob Choat 3 Fs. Focus, fun, and feedback. I love it.
Yeah.
I seriously, I think I could talk to you all day. It's fascinating. I think you're really an extraordinarily generous human being, and it's just such a pleasure talking to you. Is there sort of a one question that I haven't asked you that you think you'd want me to ask?
Probably just experiment. What do you do to experiment in life? Yeah. And I'm going to answer that.
Good.
I'm going to answer that. Yeah. I think we come into this world, and we learn a lot of stuff and everything like that, and then along the way we forget to challenge ourselves and do new things and see what works and what doesn't work. And that's where just using yourself, just experiment to see, whether it's the kind of career you want to go into. Maybe experiment and go out and do something different. Follow your, people talk about following your passion. Well, following your passion does work. You want to experiment. It may not work. There may not be a market for it still. If you won't know that till you experiment. You experiment. Being a scientist, you experiment, you test, you get feedback, experiment again and then again and again and again. And you do this, you think it's only for your early part of your life. No, you do it your whole life.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm still doing it. Grandma Moses, she and if you haven't heard about Grandma Moses, she was actually the most famous folk artist of all time. And she started her career as a painter at the age of 78.
Yeah, I know. I love those. I love those stories. I love.
So she was doing like crocheting, but her arthritis got to her, so she started painting. And she experimented by learning how to paint by looking at Currier and Ives' paintings. So she would try to emulate them. So she experimented, getting feedback, and eventually she took the memories of her childhood and started painting.
Fascinating.
And then she became famous, so famous, they had a ticker tape parade of her going down New York City. She met world leaders and everything like that. Her work got into U.S. postage stamps, cards, everything. I mean, it just was all over. She became so famous. And she kept doing it until this day she died at 101.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. It's fascinating, and this is actually, I mean, as I said, we could talk forever, but this is also something that people really struggle with. It's like, the time, I'm already, fill in the age or fill in the whatever, they are. I'm like, it's never too late. Like, it is never too late. Like, it doesn't matter. There's so many stories, but I love it. Bob, thank you. If people want to get in touch with you, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, they can go to my website, bobchoat.com, BOBCHOAT.com, and I'll have most of my information there, links to other things. So that's probably the easiest.
Perfect.
And I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, at Bob Choat, Facebook, Bob Choat, or Coach Bob Choat.
Perfect.
And so I'm throughout social media as well.
You're everywhere.
My name
everywhere. If they want to pick up your book, they can just go to
Amazon.com.
Perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. I really sincerely want to thank you for taking this time to have this conversation, for sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, your insights. It's always so fascinating speaking to you.
Well, thank you as well, Linda, for inviting me and for enabling me to share all this, because I love doing this. I think it's my big passion to instill this.
That's awesome.
And so awesome. I want to thank you as well.
Thank you. I take it. Thank you very much. And until next time.
Until next time. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay.